Welcome to the virtual book launch for Talking of Michelangelo, an autobiography, Meditations on Doubt, Struggle and Fulfillment by John Harry. I am John's publisher, Jessica Muddett, and I'm the founder of Hembury Books. And I'm here with John to ask him some questions about his wonderful book. Before I do that, I'm just going to read John's bio. Born in Washington, D.C. to an accomplished diplomat, John Harry was a partner at law firm Allen's before turning his hand to writing and winemaking. Talking of Michelangelo is a reflection on an attempt to understand the whirlwind that has been his life. Congratulations, John. How are you feeling?
Look, before I say anything else, I just want to say a huge thank you to you, Jess, and to Hembury. I think I have to say that I have never been looked after as well by any group of people anytime. And
wow.
Without you guys doing what you've done and offering the expertise you have, none of this would have happened. And of course, the discovery of the process by which, thoughts turn into a book has been really revelatory for me. I've experienced it before and it's been fantastic, but arduous. But I am happy because when the books arrived at my back doorstep the other day, and I pulled the first copy out, picked it up and felt the weight of it. It was like I was holding my life in my hand, Here all of a sudden was this, I wouldn't say monument, but certainly this object which didn't appear before, a permanent record of my life, and a pretty unvarnished one in most ways. Also, I feel tired, having been through all this. I feel very relieved as well because a very famous writer, when talking about the way in which lawyers, and I'm an ex-lawyer, he said, well, listening to the prose of lawyers was like eating a salad made of sandpaper. Well, how will I ever be able to write something that's attractive to people? And look, I'm sure there's stuff in the book that people would regard as somewhat sandpaperish, but on the whole, I think I've learnt to moderate all that and let the real thoughts and the real emotions come through, I hope. And it's also, it's a bit like, an astronaut Neil Armstrong, if you remember who he was, first astronaut to go to the moon. He hops out of the space capsule with an American flag and jams it in the ground and said, this is it, we are here, we've done it. So in a very modest way, I feel as though I've planted the work in the ground. There it is. It'll be stable forever.
It's a very big achievement. It's a very big project. Can you tell us what prompted you to write it and then how long that process took?
Well, I sort of had the first inkling of this some years ago, probably 6 years ago, when I was in Egypt with Donna. And I was it was a magnificent trip, and I was just reflecting on the immense scholarship and effort that had gone into examining and kind of recording the Egyptian history. I thought, well, that says to me, maybe I should have a crack at doing that myself. That was a first simple thought. And I thought, well, also, I want an opportunity to tell the whole unvarnished story about me because, as you know, Jess, I've had a kind of a turbulent and difficult life emotionally. And I've led many different lives. I've had numerous personas of being the lawyer, being the sportsman, being the dutiful husband, being the treacherous leaver from home. And I thought, well, not a lot of people have the whole picture and can evaluate me properly. So let me do this. Also, as a gift to the kids, I felt very, very conscious that they didn't have anything to grab and say, well, this is the origin of my father and his life, and to connect them with the previous generations in my family. And this is not a family tree or any kind of exercise like that, but it certainly will help them, I think. And also an exercise in understanding me, and you can't understand yourself without actually looking at yourself. So this is the first step. Let's have a look and see what we find out. And also, because time's just vanishing for me, for you, for everybody. And our lives are, as I say, like a puff of white smoke in the wind and about to just disappear. Do it now and get it done and get it done properly. I think this is a kind of a, like the flag on the moon,
Mm.
something that is planted there and, will exist in some remote corner of the National Archives or where these books get registered.
Yeah.
That's
Um,
what you need to know.
your father was a distant sort of remote figure and you didn't know a lot about his life. Is part of the reason why you're doing this for your children is so that it's not, you had a lot of questions about your dad and you're making sure your children don't?
I think that's a large part of it. Paradoxically, even though he was an immensely accomplished guy and did a huge amount of good service for his country in diplomacy and intelligence as well, um, he left nothing. He sanitized all his papers.
On trace.
No, zero. He never wrote a memoir. He wrote a few bits and pieces here and there, but it was nothing about him. So he was very happy to leave us with his curriculum vitae, but he was very unhappy to leave himself with us. And so we don't have anything other than the bald facts of what he didn't win.
Yeah.
And yeah, that did very much complicate my life. And I was a very energetic, um, intensely curious, mobile, and kind of, what's the right word, bulldozing kind of personality. And it didn't suit him. He wasn't interested in that. He would much have preferred me to solve the London crossword in 10 minutes every week. But and it left a gulf which really was never bridged. So another reason why I think continuity for the kids in the form of this sort of thing is a good idea.
And there's some fascinating family ancestry in your book too.
Well, yeah, it goes back a bit. I mean, the family arrived in South Australia in the 1840s, which is pretty early on. And one of the forebears was an old fella called um, Frederick Holder, who turned up, and he was a preacher, but he could quickly see that if he bought a newspaper, he could be much more important where he lived, and he bought the newspaper. Then he went into politics, and then he became the Premier of South Australia, to everybody's absolute amazement, because he came from a very humble background in Cornwall. And hey presto, all of a sudden he's Premier of South Australia. Then he got involved with, Deakin and Garron and all these guys who were the Federalists, and he became part of that clan and was very helpful in bringing South Australia into the Federation. And then when the first Parliament was founded, they asked him to be the first Speaker of the first Federal House of Parliament, which is something the family's, dined off for a long time. Been very proud of,
Yeah.
And he was quite a character, but he was a Methodist and not a very smiling man. And all his portraits show this very stern and grim character. In fact, there's a very large painting which was commissioned by the first federal Parliament in Canberra, painted by Tom Roberts, where my great-grandfather was standing up the front, obviously, with all the kind of glitterati who attended the opening of Parliament, which is what it portrayed. So there he is, beard and dark and scowling countenance. And I'm not sure whether there's much left of Fred in me, but I'm very proud to have had him do what he did.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. So your book, it's autobiography, it's nonfiction, but you have structured it as a conversation with a friend. Can you tell us about that and why you chose to structure it that way?
Well, when I first started writing, maybe, it was about 5 years ago the effort started, or a bit more. I was pondering this, and so I wrote the first 100 pages, and I stood back and looked at it and think, my God, how boring is this? And it sounds like a complete sort of dictatorial monologue. And people, when they read autobiographies, I think, are very suspicious of them, and they wonder how authentic what's being said is
Yeah.
what's being said, and they suspect people of lying and burnishing their credentials. And I thought, well, this is mad. And I knew this guy, Jimmy, I call him Jimmy Marr, that's his stage name.
Yes.
And he was a great mate of mine at school, and there's no reason why we should have been mates because it was like, best example, sort of Bambi and the Incredible Hulk. I mean, he was a tiny guy and he was a surfer, and but he just wanted to help me. I was in a boarding school at the time, and he could see what a dreadful place it was. It was Dickensian and cruel and random, and it was a horrible experience.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he befriended me, and I thought, well, why don't I turn this into a dialogue with Jim? Because he's a lovely bloke, and chances are, and it was odd, strange psychology, because I thought to myself, if I do that, maybe the presence of Jim behind me will actually provoke me into being more honest than I would otherwise have been. So he was there. It's fictional, the dialogue, if you like, but I definitely thought harder about being frank and about being honest, and discreet in some cases than I would have been had I not had that construct. So I think it's more like life, and it allows the dialogue to be random. So I could jump from, skiing to winemaking to bread making to motor cars to photography to whatever else it might be. So I think it was a very helpful device, but I think it is much more interesting to people the way it is.
Yeah, I remember our editor, Deborah, commenting that she really liked it as a device. It works really well. There's an energy to it, I think, that it creates.
Yeah. And what Pip said to me is that she finds that the thing has drive and connection.
Yep.
So it goes forward, and it has momentum, because you can change track and you don't bore people to death while you're doing it.
It could be something that other writers of autobiography do to utilize the John Harry technique.
Well, maybe so. I mean, it's not the first time dialogues have been written. They were written, 2,500 years ago in Greece. But it's a marvelous device, and it is liberating. I definitely found that.
Terrific. How important was it for you to have people like Jimmy in your life as you faced absurdity and the search of meaning in your younger years?
Well, I mean, I was in my younger years. My headmaster wrote a report for me once, and he said, "This man, John Harry, has every talent but judgment."
Oh.
Okay, I knew exactly what he meant because I was out there building my way through walls all over the place.
Does judgment come with age, though, to be fair?
Well, that was not the model my school adopted. I mean, their primary philosophy was if you were compliant and if you were hardworking and if you kept your mouth shut and everything else, then you were going to succeed not only in school but in society. But what they failed to realise that if you apply that principle to young boys who are incredibly adventurous and innovative, and you destroy their creativity, and those are exactly the people you need to make your society better, liberated, and just go off and climb mountains. So often it's the madmen and the charlatans and the guys who are prepared to say what they feel who change the world. It's not the others, not the conformists.
No.
So, I mean, I was very much in that bracket. So I got into strife all the time, and I dug myself holes, which I regularly fell into for years and years. I just never realised that there was a balance to be struck. So having Jimmy was a great personal contribution he made to my life, and I've loved him always. And for some reason I can never understand, he made himself available to me and was kind to me, and that made a massive difference to me.
Did he have sound judgment at an early age?
He did. He was very laconic, very laid back. He showed no respect for the rules that the school dished out, like uniforms, like drinking, like smoking, like nothing. I mean, he just did what he wanted to do. He was so clever. He managed to escape the authorities on every occasion. But he would look after me. He'd take me out of school, and there's a passage in the book about him taking me surfing down to Lorne. And I was a good skier at the time, and he thought, well, if this guy can ski, maybe he can surf. So he put me out. In those days, I mean, there were no things like wetsuits. They didn't exist. So what you did was you put a woolly jumper on, your budgie smugglers, and hopped on your board, and away you went. And we'd always go in wintertime when it was completely
Oh,
freezing.
so cold.
Yeah, it was miserable. Anyway, we spent many, many, many happy times in Lorne, drinking illegally in the pubs, crashing on the terrace after having a bottle of port each. It was a wonderful time.
Yeah, good youth. A good youth.
Yes,
Yes.
it was a good. Yeah, it was that part of it was good. I was alone because my parents were always overseas. So I ran my life from the age of 11 when I went into boarding school. But what Jim did for me was give me a kind of base of a degree of confidence. I mean, I didn't learn not to fall into holes for many years after that, but he started the process. Just a
Mm.
lovely, lovely man.
It's the true mateship of the Australian spirit, I think.
Absolutely. He and I were bonded very closely, and we were together most of our lives. And he made a lot of money as a stockbroker. He decided he was going to retire at 35 and take his family and kids to France. So they bought a big boat and they floated around the Mediterranean for 20 odd years. And he became an alcoholic in the process, and it really wrecked his life. And as you know, Jess, he died quite young and quite tragically.
Mm. It is. It is really tragic. We bought a holiday house from someone in Phillip Island. Well, my grandpa did, and he had won the lottery and drank himself to death. So, you got to be careful what you wish for, right?
You do. Luckily, I've never had that problem. I've got far
Mm.
more wine than any 1,000 men in Australia would. So, and you could say that represented temptation. Well, yes and no. And I have a real live problem. What on earth I'm going to do with it all? And so what I've done in my will is I've said Donna is going to be my executor, and she is
Mm.
going to parcel up my wine and decide who gets what. So, I mean, to me, that's a marvelous thing
Yeah,
to have this process of argument about who gets the wine happen after I've gone.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. Could you please tell us about the title? It is in reference to a line in a T.S. Eliot poem, The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock. Can you please tell us more about the selection and if you're a big Eliot fan?
well, I am. I mean, everybody knows, he's one of the preeminent poets of the poetic canon, certainly in Western literature. And this particular poem I had known well for a long time. And there are many, many literary firsts in the poem. One of which was that it was one of the early works in which the tedium and anxiety and difficulty of being alive was examined in the way that he did, very beautifully. And the underlying theme of the poem is that Prufrock is a man who is alienated and finds it very difficult to form relations with people, with other people, and has a poor view of himself, all that sort of stuff. And he's attending a social function where he hears women floating around talking of Michelangelo. And, it's a conversation he feels he can never be part of because he's not of that status, he's not of that personality. He finds it difficult to talk about, things in a neutral, unemotional way. And I mean, that was the sort of person that I was for a hell of a long time, feeling very much on the outside of society, and just couldn't work out what the problem was, and would continue to run into these brick walls, in all kinds of situations. But I thought it was appropriate to use that title because it reflected so much of what I was, and was emblematic of the theme of the book, which is the overcoming of those issues, or at least for the most part. And the other reason I chose it was that I was a Michelangelo freak when I was younger. I spent a lot of time in Europe running around just to find the Michelangelo sculptures in the various churches and monasteries around Europe. And what intrigued me about him was I could not understand how a man could look at a block of marble and say, I can see inside that block this figure, and I'm going to chip away at this block with taking tiny chips at a time and finally reveal this form. And I thought to myself, well, number one, I loved seeing the final images.
Mm.
I also felt it was a little bit the way I was too, marble being an incredibly hard substance. And I
Mm.
was kind of hard to decipher and get on with at the time. And what I'm really doing in writing this book is just that, is attacking a block of marble, trying to make sense of it. So as a
I
novel,
thought Donna, your wife's comment the other day that this is your renaissance was a beautiful thing to say. And it's true.
yeah, it is. I mean, she deserves a massive amount of credit because really until I met Donna, I still suffered from this problem all the way into my kind of early 50s. And then she decided she was going to redeem me and
Mm.
other things. She bloody well did. Whereas I'd found it difficult to form really stable and trusting relations for all that period beforehand. The minute Donna came along, she inducted me into her friendship group, which is absolutely massive. I mean, many of them actually came up to me quite fiercely in some cases when we first appeared as a couple
Yeah.
and wanted to investigate me and figure out whether I was really worthy of her company.
Oh,
And I'm happy to say that I don't think there's one exception. I passed the audition, so they felt happy. Um,
mm.
but really, being inducted in mainly into her female friendship group, which I'd never been in before at all, I'd never
Yeah.
been in female friends, was something like seeing the sun come up for me. It just made such a difference to my life.
Beautiful.
All of
Beautiful.
a sudden, I had 20 or 30 mates who actually rang me sometimes.
Proper people is what it
Proper
is.
people who appreciated, who could see inside people far better than certainly men could, all my old friends, who all of them viewed me as the bloke they knew 30 or 40 years ago. None of them made any kind of mental adjustment for the possibility that I might change. And that's a Melbourne thing too. Oh, well, we knew him when he was at school. He was a rascal and a rebel at school. He must still be. Yeah, but that was a real watershed for me. And Donna was entirely responsible for it.
Yeah. Well, it's been wonderful to work with you both on your book and your exciting launch next week and things like that.
She's a cracker, Jess.
She is a cracker. She's an
A
action
bit
woman.
like you, she does things. She
Yeah.
decides something's going to happen and it happens. It's properly planned and the right people are involved and you get stuff happens.
Yeah. Which is the same with you. I told Sinead how you got me with the balloons when I said, because Donna sent through to Sinead and Earl, we need the book cover for the balloons. And I said to you, John, how many balloons are you having at your launch? And you said, totally straight face, 2,500. Didn't want to have balloons at the start. I love how, see, it's taking on a life of its own.
Well, it is. It's hard a skill to learn. And there are some things that I've said about languages. If you go to Paris and you can't speak French, you go to a restaurant, you're going to get sent up by the waiting staff. They're just going to do it to you because you can't converse with them in any form of language they can understand. Whereas if you learn the language of friendship and how important it is to observe, be watchful, try to understand, see the person's point of view, ask questions, not people stuff, then that's the language of friendship. And if you learn that, pretty much anything's possible.
Yeah, you have to be a curious person. I think some people just lack curiosity, so they can't ask real questions. It just everything stays on the surface level.
Well, it does also stays related to them.
Yeah, stays related to them.
I can't do this because, you've been a pain in the ass. Well, where does that get anybody?
Yeah.
No.
Your book is littered with references to and quotes from famous authors, philosophers, politicians, and singers. Are these the results of formal education, particularly the philosophy, or a personal interest in the humanities?
Well, look, I mean, partly humanities, partly education, but partly also I thought about this. It kind of reflects. I'm enormously curious about everything, and that's a curse, and it's a benefit too. And I just find where you come across a form of words that really means something to you and is expressed briefly and beautifully, it's a lovely thing to hear, because very few people have that ability. And there are many, many examples of that I've littered the book with, and maybe I shouldn't have. But things like, when there's an old Jewish expression, which is something like, however bitter it may be, the truth must be told. And trying to tell the truth in the book, against the possibility of a massive PR campaign by my ex-wife was testing.
Mm.
And so the rules were A, truth, but B, trying to tell it in a way which was as soft and, as real and as true to life as it could be told. And I think I've done that.
Yeah.
There are many, many things I could have said, which I might have felt happy about for 5 minutes, but not something that was going to work.
Not your style, John.
Yeah.
You've taken the utmost care with it. I mean, we did book coaching 18 months ago, I think it was. We did a few sessions and you went away and worked really hard on it, but it didn't stop at the first draft. Like, you have poured hours of your time into getting it right. And even to the final
Yes.
version, there were subsequent changes that I know they were small, but they were important. The sensitivity that you're applying in this book.
Well, I don't expect any of that to be recognised, but
you know it, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, no, I will. And the same applied to my father, of course, because it began by taking a pretty negative view of him in his life. But I think the realizations about him have been really important, because the first thing I did was I sent the manuscript to my sister, who's a magnificent woman, and is a huge friend. And she said, "Look, it'd be easy for other people to interpret what you said about your father as being very bitter, and that's not something you can allow. You've got to bear in mind the fact that, he was, in his own way, emotionally limited. He was very circumscribed by his intelligence background, where you were not supposed to say anything to anybody about any circumstance. So what he could say was not much about himself. And also, people don't really think, when they consider those sorts of people. And he was clearly responsible for some pretty unpleasant decisions that had bad consequences for people. And I think people don't understand that when you finish your life having worked that way, it has a profound negative impact on you, because you then start to think about, was this really helpful? Did I really change the course of the country? Was it worth, lives? I think that really has had impacted on him. So all that changed and softened the description of him greatly.
Do you know what else? I mean, you chose the photo of him for your book cover, so it's an ode to him. You could have chosen any number of photos. Do you want to tell us about this photo, this amazing photo?
Well, the photo has a number of meanings. I mean, one is the most obvious, I suppose. It shows me, when I first showed this photo to Michael and said, this candidate for the book cover, he said, "Oh my goodness me, how exotic you look." And it's not, I don't think I look exotic. I look kind of angry.
I love the expression.
What is going on here? But also, my father was at that time, really making enormous progress and doing some things which, he was 35 at the time, or maybe a little bit less, nobody of his age had ever done. He did some incredible work in the United Nations, for example. Then he represented Australia on a whole range of deeply important decisions that we had to make as a country at a very, very early age. And he was made principal private secretary to a guy called Doc Evatt, who was a very prominent member of the Labor Party in Australia. Brilliant, but slightly mad. And they chose Dad to be his private secretary because he was one of the very few people who had the common sense and the resilience and the diplomatic skills to manage him. And, all credit is due to him for that. And in the end, I'm not sure whether my life was improved by, having to be so independent of him and the family for such a long time or not. I don't know. It may have been better for me, to have been tossed into boarding school at 11, which I was, and to carve my own path than to have been, in the family house until I was 18, 19, 20, and to have had a kind of rivalry with Dad, which wouldn't have been productive. Don't know.
I don't know, but life is, it's hard to know, isn't it? But
Look, he was a good bloke, and he in a very distant way. I describe him as a searchlight, at a distance, which just flicks around, and you've got occasional beam of light from him, and then would turn in the other direction. And so it was intermittent care, and he never tried to be a mate. We never played footy. We never went to the pub. He never opened a bottle of beer just for the sake of opening a bottle of beer to have a drink with his son. None of that happened. He's a very, very close man.
Yeah, it's hard to say that there wouldn't have been benefits if you'd had some of those memories with him. But have you emerged stronger? Yes, you have.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. But now, boys have a way of convincing themselves that if their father doesn't pay them a huge amount of attention, that they're lesser citizens. And he certainly did go through a process of analysing me for talent. My talents were quite different to his. He was a cryptographer, mathematician, who wrote codes and so on and so forth. I was anything but that.
Well, do you think he'd be proud of you for your book? I think he would be.
Oh, look, I without a doubt.
Yeah.
Probably it's something he thought very much about, but he ran out of gas, ran out of ideas, and I think he himself finished his life worrying about who he had been and what he'd done. I don't think he was at all confident about the outcome of his life. Towards the end, he was not all that interested in being alive, I don't think. No, he died tragically and very quickly. He went to get a small medical procedure on his wrist or something, and the instruments were unsterilised, not properly sterilised. He got sepsis, and in 4 days
That's awful.
He disappeared. Yeah. But anyway.
Let's talk about your amazing daughter, Pip, who writes books for children and young teenagers. Were books and writing always part of your household? And did you know that you would write a book one day?
I had no idea I'd write a book. I didn't think it was going to be possible because, having been, through the mill in a law firm and having had a law education, I thought my writing was permanently destroyed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it may have been without serious concentration and applied effort.
Well, yes. And I wouldn't say that books are all perfect. I mean, there's lots of things I'd prefer to do, but of course, there has to be a finish. As far as Pip is concerned, I mean, Pip was a sleeper for quite a long time. She was a great athlete. She was a highly attractive kid, rebellious as hell, but clearly destined for good things. She had this extraordinary ability to concentrate, get down behind her desk and do stuff. And the same was the case in her swimming training. She was very, very good. But she built a career, which she continues to build methodically and well. And she's now widely regarded as almost the sort of doyenne of female adult fiction writers. She's now into her sort of 6th or 7th novel, the last one being about the bees. I don't know whether you followed that at all. Yep. And she's also done some illustrated kids' books, which are beautiful.
Yeah, amazing.
I have the deepest respect for what she's done, and I can't imagine she could have managed a career in a better way than she has. And her support for me in this process has been really extraordinary, and she's been completely respectful of my vision and what I should be saying, and she has fully supported what I've said. She read the manuscript, came back to me and said, look, it's marvellous. I loved reading every bit of it, and it's taught me a heck of a lot. And there were only 2 or 3 things she floated to me about possible modifications, and I sort of took the hint. And as you said, just recently, I tried once again to make some descriptions a bit more friendly.
Mm.
And the message was, look, to my former wife, I'm here, and I've done nothing but try to indicate that I'm willing, to have a cordial relationship anytime. But if it's going to be that, it can't come and go.
Yep.
It's got to be that, or it's got to be not that. Somewhere in between where, it's good one day and not so good the other. But I do celebrate Mary's enormous hard work in raising a family. We had 4 kids, very, very difficult assignment for her.
Yeah.
She did it extremely well, and was a loving and competent and attentive mother. And in the early years of our relationship, we had a lot of fun. It was terrific. It's just that sometimes in life, people's worldviews and expectations for the future change a bit. And
Yeah.
but I celebrate her commitment to the family. It was extraordinary.
It's wonderful. Your book is deeply philosophical, and it's really grappling with the meaning of life. Did writing a book help you find some answers, or do you think you've actually ended up with more questions, perhaps better questions?
Well, I certainly think I finished up with questions. And human beings are complicated things. Figuring out how anybody works, even if you're an outside observer, is a tough assignment, because people exist at so many different levels, and people are driven, don't have the agency they think they might, and their subconsciouses to an extent rule them. And I think you're aware, Jess, that I went through an extensive kind of full-on Freudian psychoanalysis when I was younger, and it didn't really teach me a heck of a lot, except that it's very, very hard to know ourselves, and what we're made of, what our inclinations are, how our experience is going to be expressed. So I think that the process of writing a book has absolutely clarified as much as I can clarify about me and my life, and that to me has been a magnificent outcome. I say in the book at one point, I really do think after this I like myself better than I did before.
I love that.
And I wouldn't say, it's impossible to raise everything and start again. No, it's not possible. I'm trained as a lawyer. Sometimes I get pernickety. Sometimes I get, what's the right expression? A little pedantic about this or that. Or Donna throws a challenge at me, which I start to analyse like a lawyer, and she says, "Don't be ridiculous. This is not what this is about at all." It's very instructive. She tells the truth 100%, 100% of the time. And if she doesn't know what you're saying, you get it between the eyes, and then you sort of reel away thinking, "God, where's this going?" And you realise that she actually was right. There's a fantastic instinct for human behaviour, and also can be very impatient with flawed human behaviour. I discovered that also.
Yeah.
But
I like a straight shooter.
Yeah, no, remarkable. So yes, it's answered a lot of questions. It's crystallised. Look, it's been the first time that there's been any sort of coherent record of my life. And my life has been subject to a lot of innuendo, a lot of criticism. I've got a lot of tall puppy stuff. The law firm experience was unlikable, and I do regard that in many ways as, for me, wasted time.
Yeah.
I should have been doing all sorts of other things, but you can understand with 4 kids all at private schools.
Completely understand.
You have to compromise.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And on paper, it's a great career. So yes. My final question for you is, what is next for you?
Well, having discovered that I can write, and having discovered that it is possible for my imagination to to operate, even at my advanced age, Jess. I do want to write some more because it's been an absolutely absorbing process.
Mm.
And I have a bit of a plan for a bit of a, I wouldn't call it a spy novel exactly, but it is in and around intelligence. And I've discovered that there's been nothing written about espionage and intelligence in the Australian context, really.
Wow.
So, I mean, there's no Australian Le Carre, for example. Not that I dream of
Yeah, but we need, but this is, just exciting because we need the espionage.
It's an open field
thing. It's been happening.
it's open. And Australia has a very advanced intelligence system, and they really do now, and they have for some time. And their operators have been regarded as really, really important, and they're great colleagues, close colleagues of the CIA guys, the MI6 guys, and so.
Yep, we've got Gap and everything.
Yeah. So, and also I had the exposure to my father's life, which obviously will be helpful. But
that'll be amazing.
Also now in a position to consult artificial intelligence, not about writing the book at all, but research is so simple.
Yeah, that's just great.
I mean, I asked a question, name me the sort of sidearm that a bloke from Russian intelligence would have used between 1960 and 64. Boom, out it came.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Amazing.
Well, it needs to be fact checked, of course.
But what a great starting point to have a.
It'll save time. But look, love to have Hembury involved in that. It's going to take me. It needs to be quicker. But I won't wrestle as much as I have with this one.
It's different.
Yeah, it's been a tough birth.
Yeah. The second book is always easier than the first. It's like raising children.
Is it?
Yes. Yes. Easier, more enjoyable. You take the pressure off and just enjoy the creative part. Have you got a working title for it?
Not yet. No, yes, I do. Yes, I do. It's called An Unpatriotic Hero.
Great.
Something like that.
Have an amazing cover.
Yeah, no, an unpatriotic hero, an unpatriotic man. We'll see. But I'm rereading A Perfect Spy by John Le Carre at the moment. And, when you look at that stuff, you see what real talent can do. I mean, he is extraordinary. But I'm beginning to understand how he puts his books together. And there won't be any
Vices.
There won't be any theft, but there'll be a study of method.
Yeah. Absolutely. Terrific. All right, John, well, we'll look forward to it. And we hope you have a fantastic day today. Talking of Michelangelo, an autobiography is available in paperback and in hardback and as an ebook. And everyone should go and grab a copy and enjoy this.
Thank you very much, Jess. And again, can I just compliment you and your team? I mean, you've got some wonderful women who are all highly skilled. I at no stage ever felt other than in the very best hands. So thanks for what you've done.
Thanks, John. It's been an absolute pleasure working with you on publishing your book.
You're very welcome. Let's hope the partnership lasts a bit longer.